that the last time we spoke, you were on the way to meeting national security. There are several accounts of what happened, but I want you to just take us from where you left us and tell us what happened in that meeting.
You know, I think that it's interesting that you and I had that conversation in real time as the events were unfolding, so that if people were truth-minded, it would be easy to refer to that conversation which was happening live in real time and put themselves in the position to determine what to believe in the midst of all the noise. So as you remember, we had been invited to meet the Inspector General of Police, and so much has happened since then that it's weird to think that this was just a few days ago we were talking about this. That we were supposed to meet the Inspector General of Police to discuss our request to go on a street level protest. And in that meeting, on our way to the meeting, we're supposed to go to the office of the regional commander, where we went and where our representatives were then being conveyed to meet the IGP. And midway then, they were told that there was a change of plans and that they were being sent to national security. Now, at that point, and then when we were having the conversation, did I give any indication whatsoever that there was a planned meeting with members of cabinet at all?
No, not at all.
And so we have then heard now consistently government say that a meeting was convened with us regarding the issues being raised, and that we had met them and engaged them, and that all the people should disregard the fact that we were escorted into a meeting that we had no knowledge of. They claim that, in fact, the meeting had been scheduled and that we were voluntarily agreed to attend the meeting. But I have always said that we who are speaking in the public and on behalf of others must hold ourselves to certain ethical standards. And part of that is because truth matters in politics. And the reason why we are at this juncture is because people have lost faith in the given word of our representatives. And it's so important that as we are demanding that we rebuild trust in the voice and in the words of institutions, that we are also able to hold ourselves to the same standards of accountability. So, I mean, I'm hoping that at some point that people pick up on that old audio that was played, and then that puts into context, and for them to hear and determine for themselves whether we are hearing truth from the Ministry of Information or whether we are hearing truth from the Ministry of National Security. So we went there, and then our representatives were then, their phones were seized from them, and then were ushered into a meeting only to find almost the entire complement of our ministers of state, except notably the Minister for Health.
The Minister for Health was absent.
No, the Minister for Health was absent. So you had a Minister for National Security, you had a Minister for Interior, you had a Minister for Defense, Minister for Finance, Attorney General, we have the Minister for Foreign Affairs, several members of National Security. I think I had the list up again on my Facebook wall because we've been trying to be very transparent on what happened. And then in that meeting,
I'm guessing you've never felt so important in your life.
To be honest, for me, I felt displeased in the manner in which this had happened.
Okay.
Because I think that when we are engaging others, right, we have to do so and believe them to be responsible individuals, and that we have to accord them the respect to make their own decisions, you know, and not get them into a meeting where they have no knowledge of. And I think it doesn't, you know, it speaks to me of a lack of trust of us. And, you know, it's interesting that you said this word, because in their meeting, what they kept saying to our representatives was that you should be lucky we are even giving you this audience. When we were being activists, we never even had the opportunity to meet anybody at all.
That you should be lucky that you're getting that audience from them.
Yes. You know, and I think that misses the point. That governance is about service. And if you were looking at me and people who are talking about and expecting them to be eternally, I don't know, bent over our knees and be falling over ourselves, that, oh ye almighty, you have spoken, then I think we are in for a real problem if this is the way in which our democracy processes what leadership means. But in the meeting, The substance of what we were saying.
Before you get there, for the purpose of clarity, so what you expected was that at least you should have been informed ahead that you're going to meet this group.
Absolutely. In the same way, when the IGP extended an invitation to us, we complied. It was less than a day's notice, but we complied and we were attending early morning. And in fact, we had conversations and briefed and debriefed as to how we were going to engage in that conversation. So there was a genuine attempt to converse. But also, as we are saying this, and that's, for instance, I have said consistently that it is important that if you're engaging, that the government comes through the front door. It is important for building trust, you know? So I don't think that hasn't happened. And unfortunately, they're still saying this, and it's almost as if it's a cross they want to die on. That, in fact, we were invited to a meeting and we accepted and entered there voluntarily. The Minister for Information has said so. The Attorney General has said so. Yesterday in the press conference by the Minister for Finance, he said again that he listened to us, and this is what we said. But in fact, the Attorney General previously also said that when we came into the meeting, we showed bad faith and refused to talk at all. You know, it is important that government gets its messaging right. The mixed messaging is, you know, it's confusing to Ghanaians and doesn't speak for government. So should we get into the substance of the meeting then?
Yes. But the issue of bad faith.
Yes.
From the Attorney General, that you exhibited bad faith. But I'm guessing if you get into the substance of the meeting, you give us an idea.
Yes.
So please take us through.
Now, you know, there's so many people, and I've said consistently, daily, we are getting over 600,000 tweets of people talking differently. It averages in the period that we are talking now, over a 10-day period, close to 6 million, if you're being minded to put all this together on a daily basis. To so many people who are talking, what we have done is that we wanted to convene a protest so that so many of the people who are speaking online can bring that message on the ground and let the conversation simmer into the conversation. So we proposed ourselves as conveners of a protest, not as representatives and as voice of the entirety of Ghanaian youth speaking. That would be so disingenuous. I do not have that mandate from anybody. So all we know is that we're trying to organize a protest, and that is the only thing we hold ourselves out for, as being able to speak to that protest. And that's why we're going to the IGP to speak to that. So to bring us into a meeting and ask us, speak now or forever hold your peace, I think it's a demonstration of misunderstanding of our role and what we're representing. Do you understand? So it is important that we do not misrepresent our authority and our capacity to speak for anybody. I think that is very crucial, because what Ghanaians are speaking against is exactly that type of conduct. Now, in the meeting, they went at length and talked about so many issues, but the most important ones are that and all these three, the Minister of Interior, the Minister for National Security, the Minister for Defense, said that terrorists would hijack the protests. And this is what it was about, terrorism. And they used and whipped that terrorism dog till it was dead and almost out of its carcass.
Terrorists will hijack the demonstration.
Yes, and the all terrorists need is an opportunity to get a foothold in Ghana. And so this protest, they will use it. That's all the conversation was about. And it's so mind-boggling that the language of terrorism will be deployed in the context of this conversation. Maybe they believe it genuinely, and that's why we are now engaged in a conversation about they having conducted illegal and unlawful surveillance and cloning of our phones. Again, the substance of that particular question, I would leave that, because they have again continued to engage on it, and I don't want to fight that in the media anymore. I think there has to be a legal process around that. So we're still studying the possibilities we have. So, but that gives you context as well about the nature of the conversation we had. And then when they went through all this, they said, now speak. Do you agree to, stop the protest, to our representatives? And they said to them, this is not the meeting we thought we were going to. And to ask us to speak now, and then also address, as you were asking us, what are the concerns of the youth, so that we can form an interministerial committee here and address them, misunderstand the grassroots nature of what these conversations are about. This is what we said to them categorically. This is what they mean by we refuse to talk and give them our concerns. and grievances. Do you feel, and I want Ghanaians to reflect closely on this, that if there are so many people speaking in online and engaging their governments in this manner, is it fair to us, who are only trying to bring that conversation down to the streets and organize a protest, that we be asked in a meeting we had no idea what's happening and were escorted into about 15 minutes while we were on the way to meet the IGP, that give us the list of all your grievances now or forever hold your peace? Is that fair? Is that the way in which we want our government to relate to us as citizens? You know, and these questions are important because they're questions of structure and process. So that when the finance minister comes on air, like he did yesterday, and says, I have listened to the people, and this is based on what we have said, I have come to list this out. We interrogate that clearly as to what exactly he thinks he heard or what he thinks he's engaging with. So, I mean, I hope this gives you a substance of how that whole entire interaction happened.
Very, very interesting circumstances. So you walk into a meeting where you are going to a meeting where you thought the whole conversation was about protests, the protest that was planned, and now you end up in a meeting where you are being asked to speak for people whose consent you didn't have to speak for.
Yes.
And
yes, exactly.
Under those circumstances, what did you say? Because they were asking.
I mean, we told them basically the same thing, that we do not have the mandate to speak for the entirety of people. We are organizing a protest, and in respect of that, the police has given us a letter, and we are actually in the process of responding to that letter. So we'll make it known to you. Actually, unknown to us, they were at the same time they were engaging us in that meeting in the courts, trying to procure an illegal injunction to stop the protest, and they are claiming that dialogue. You know, it's this two-faced nature of institutional response that so many of us are frustrated by, you know.
So, two things I heard clearly from what he said. First one, it seemed you were there to be spoken to back down. Was that the impression you got?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the deployment of the terrorism language was especially to give us that effect. In fact, and quote me on this, they said that when they came into office, terrorist activity in Burkina Faso was at 20%. Now it's at 80%. And so they know that all the people, Ghana is juicy for them, and that they just want to come in because we have access to the sea, and we have gold, and we have other mineral resources. So they want access to that. This is exactly what they said. And we have taken copious note of it. I mean, our phones were not allowed in the meeting, so we couldn't record the meeting because, I mean, obviously we didn't even know this was what was happening. But we had copious notes, and they can confirm that one of our representatives was acting as a scribe and writing down exactly what was being said, because it was important that we communicate what they were saying to the broad people online who were speaking and hearing what their government had to say to them.
So after all that, all they sought was back down. That's all.
That's all they were interested in that conversation. And I find it curious that for people who have deployed in the public the language of COVID-19, that the Minister for Health was not in that meeting. It's really interesting to me. I wonder why. I don't know, but I wonder why.
And I was coming to that because that sounded kind of weird. The man who was supposed to explain to you how or why they feel that your event was going to be super spreader sort of was not in there. So COVID was never mentioned at all.
No, COVID was deployed as part of the other languages as well. Let's be clear. But the person who is the represent the government's voice and face on COVID himself was not there. I mean, if you remember when he was going through the parliamentary approval process, he said to the ears of all Ghanaians that at the height of the pandemic, that he had convened interministerial committee on COVID responses, and his colleague ministers will not attend those meetings. That he felt that the presidency had to convene it. So he himself, on national TV, told everyone that even in the life-threatening, in the face of a global pandemic, our ministers could not agree to attend meetings and be able to coordinate their responses to us. That is governance. That's the face and reality of our government. So let's continue to hold the mirror to it.
So you then refer to what the finance minister did over the weekend, where he addressed a press conference on what he said was based on certain agreements or conversations between you. So you're saying that you never ever said anything that should have led to any plan being developed?
We never said anything that led to any plan being developed. In fact, they had repeated at certain instances in their questioning the same fix yourself narrative, where one of them, I'm not going to mention who now, says they were renting a house and then their landlord came and increased their rent, and the landlord said because their neighbor has increased their rent, they're also increasing it. In this conversation, what do we think government can even do to solve this? And our representative said, listen, I'm not going to engage you on this substance, but if we had a functioning rent control system, this wouldn't happen. And whose responsibility for that system to be put in place? Who has that responsibility? You know, so I don't know at which point and what they surmised out of that conversation that led them to say that they are engaged and that was enough to situate the finance minister to give the kind of press the presser he released, claiming that this was based on engagement with us.
So everything that played out in the public domain also played out in that meeting. The fix yourself, I have to fix yourself, yes, to even came up.
Yes. I think the fix yourself messaging, you would agree that it's come from the highest levels and not from the party's base. It's come from the highest level. I mean, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Honorable Nombo, you've seen him put out that statement, which people have found outrageous. I mean, you've seen the leader of government business in Parliament, the majority leader, go on and give a press conference saying that he doesn't even understand what we are saying and even the validity of the claims we are making. And then you have also seen the Attorney General on Newsfile saying that there's no basis for the protest and there's no reason for why we are even going on this protest, because in the US, George Floyd died and that was good reason, but here there's nothing happening. So why are we doing this? So that's the messaging, and they truly believe at the point. Now, to give them credit, maybe their positions have evolved on this, and we are happy to engage them, but also engage not only them, but everybody else. Because we have been at pains to stress that the responses we need to fixing the country cannot come only from the bosom of government. If they had them, would have been fixed. It must come from everybody else. And we must listen and put in place a process where listening is the virtue of how we fix the country. You know? So yeah, that's the sense of the meeting as well.
Did you get from that meeting any clear understanding of what was happening from what they were saying? Any clear understanding of what was happening on social media, what the movement was about, and any commitment to actually dealing with that from that meeting before the finance minister spoke?
I think that meeting, they fully hadn't quite understood what it was about, and that was clear. And I'm hoping that they have taken the time now to learn, because we are all in a learning process. I am learning. I mean, I was saying that I've seen Twitter being used in such an innovative ways that I've been put to shame by my continuous faith in only communicating on Facebook, that I immediately went to create a Twitter account with Baka Age So please follow me as well as I learn how to organize and mobilize using other platforms. So I'm hoping that the government is also learning and adapting, and it's a process that is needed. But at the time we had the meeting, it hadn't seemed to me that they are taking the time to do the work of listening and learning. No, I don't think so.
Interesting. And did I hear you say they were saying that in the case of George Floyd, there was someone was shot, and that in this case nothing has happened, and they don't see why you are on this path to protest and everything?
Don't only take my word for it. People just have to go to something news file, which is I think on YouTube, and can watch and listen to what the Attorney General said specifically on that front, that he did not think there was anything that has sparked this, and it is inappropriate and it is not grounded. And it's interesting to me that he thought, even when he was referring to the George Floyd incident, he failed to understand that the reason why people went into the street and were so angry was that it was an example, an expression of a broader systemic issue of systemic bias and systemic racism that is used in police responses to citizens. And here people are raising valid concerns of systemic socioeconomic problems, systemic governance and political breakdown and problems. And you're saying that those same systemic issues need to be dramatized in the death of a citizen before government can take action. Well, so many citizens died in the last election. Maybe that provides them enough blood that it moves government to act. But as long as we are saying we do not think that our democracy requires bloodshed and people dying before our state institutions listen to the voice of young people who want to speak. No.
So, having heard that, and I'm guessing from what you've said, from the conclusions you've drawn, does it not create a sense that they do not think that it's justifiable in the first place? That the whole hashtag face the country is not justifiable, and perhaps they may also be feeling that there's no fixing that's needed?
Well, the finance minister came yesterday and gave a press statement where he reread the budget to us. And it's to give us a sense that these answers have already been provided, and all we need to do is that maybe we didn't, communicate it in a dramatic sense by inviting pressmen and delivering it in the form of a press statement. And that's the way in which once you hear it, then young people will be like, okay, sorry, my mistake. Maybe that's what they think. I do not know. But all I'm asking for is that let's put a process in place for listening to people. And I've given indications of what that process could look like. For instance, I have said clearly that a lot of the young people speaking were born after the 1992 Constitution. And they have not seen that Constitution and the democratic promises under it live up to expectations. They haven't seen our democracy deliver on those promises. And in our process of adopting the 1992 Constitution, it is different from how we adopted the 1979 Constitution, where we put together a small committee led by the late Professor Thomas Mensah and have them produce a constitutional document, which then the AFRC then proclaimed, and then we went away. No, in this case, we had a broad-based constituent assembly. Market women were represented, teachers were represented, professional bodies represented. Everybody was invited to participate in that conversation and process. We should understand that we have come to a juncture of crisis. People have lost faith in the democracy, and people have a lack of belief that when government speaks, that its word is bond. So let's create a new charter. Let's put the document that sets the structure of our governance back on the block. And let's organize a framework within which everybody can voice their grievances in a framework that recognizes them. We can do this. Come on. I was a member of the Constitution Review Commission as a researcher and counsel to the commission. And we produced a document that has continued to gather dust. On hindsight today, I still feel, in as much as we visited so many communities in Ghana and we spoke to so many different people, the process was still elite-led. We had to go and listen to them and translate it into a document, rather than bringing all of them into the same space and let them have conversations with each other and speak to each other in different areas and different sectors. So that so many people can bring ideas on board on how we fix the country. This is what fix the country together would look like for me.
Let me just land on the issue of what you said about the finance ministers. You said he reread the budget.
Well, this is a sentiment that so many people are saying, that what we got was an essentially rereading of the budget statement. Yes.
But did you hear anything in there that convinces you that perhaps something is going to be done?
Well, if the budget didn't convince so many of young people, I wonder if rereading it is what was needed, But I have said that if you listen carefully to people, people are saying that, and we say this in the notification we give the police, that people are tired of the consistent failure to deliver on promises and the string of consistent undelivered promises. And the response of the finance minister is that, great, I hear you. Here are a new list of promises. Do you think that this is what people are asking for? Personally, I haven't seen it to be so, and I speak for myself here. I think that people want faith to be rebuilt, and they want, how should I put it? They want trust to be rebuilt before we can get back into believing and trusting in the word of officials again.
I said I was going to land on that, but then I recall that one of the videos that's making rounds from, I think, your appearance on Newsfile is the one where you're talking about the cloning of your phones. And I'm guessing you've seen a response from the Minister for Information. What do you make of that? What happened, and how do you respond to the things he said contained in that statement?
Specifically, there are a number of things contained in the statement. And I have said that one of the options we are studying is taking this on legally. And it's not the first time we have been here. The government has been sued before on this very practice of illegal surveillance. So it's not something fanciful that our government has not engaged in before. Okay? So if it has never been in that situation, people would believe its words. Where one of my colleagues is even suing the police now, and the matter gets being thrown from court to court about illegal access that the police obtained to another person's communication devices. I was involved in a case where the police seized somebody's laptop and gained illegal access to it without permit. So this is something that happens. Now, initially, the statement on Newsfile made by Godfred Dame, the Attorney General, and Gideon Boakong, spokesperson for the Vice President, was that we took our phones into the meeting and we were tweeting throughout the meeting. That's what they said. And on that program, I put my integrity on the line, and I said, because what we say matters, if it turns out that we did not take our phones into the meeting and our phones were taken from us, I would offer that if we took our phones into the meeting, I would offer to resign from anything having to do with the country, and not purport to speak in connection with any of those issues, because I have shown to the people that they cannot trust my word, and it would be hypocrisy to be asking that we need to rebuild faith rebuild trust in government when I cannot engender trust in my own words. And I threw the same challenge to them, that if it is established that the phones were taken away from us, then Gideon Boakong and the Attorney General must resign. Now, the statement issued by the National Security, which was signed by the Minister of Information, says clearly that the phones were taken away from us. Now, again, who is to be believed in this conversation? On the second point, they claim that the government does not indulge in illegal surveillance, and they will do so only after warrant. Again, we have examples that show the contrary. But even if the case may be, we have to push the conversation even a step further. The circumstances under which warrants for wiretapping and illegal surveillance can be obtained. You have seen the example of how an injunction in perpetuity was obtained against Face the Country protest against established constitutional norms. And a way in which even the Attorney General considered on Newsfile that the order itself was unconstitutional. So Ghanaians need to push their governments and their courts specifically about the ease with which the executive can parade in the courts and obtain such warrants, because the judiciary is supposed to be vigilant and protect our rights. And if it's not doing so, then my God, where are we heading as a country? So that's my response to that now.
And then the matter of bad faith coming in. Listening to you, your account and what you are hearing them saying, what do you make of the allegation of bad faith?
Well, I think it's important to reframe and set in context what bad faith means. They have said that the fact that when we were escorted into that meeting and they asked us to speak now or forever hold our peace, we didn't speak enough for them to hear and put in place their interministerial committee. And that is evidence of bad faith. And we have said that we cannot afford to speak on behalf of a constituency whose consent we haven't secured, which speaks to bad faith. Being ushered into a meeting that was never convened, and yet being insistent till heavens fall that there was a meeting convened and we had knowledge of it and we came there voluntarily. All those questions, which speaks of bad faith. Engaging us in a meeting where you're telling us that please consider dropping the protest, while you knew already that you were in court securing an illegal order to stop it, which speaks of bad faith. I mean, I think this is a question that, because we are all communicating to Ghanaians, and I like the process of dialogue because it brings our citizens in and they can make certain judgments for themselves. That's my sense on that.
Always a pleasure talking to you, but I also understand that you're working out processes in the court to see how you can perhaps, do you know when that order from the court expires and when you can have the opportunity of perhaps giving it a second try? And I guess I forgot one thing. Because yesterday we were supposed to demonstrate. Apparently the police actually went there to wait for you in case you decide to turn up. Have you heard that? And have you heard the kind of...
I mean, yeah, the BBC has reported on that. The BBC has videos and pictures. And I invite everybody else to see. I think they prepared even the hot water cans that they had sprayed on the law students who went on demonstration. And I saw a couple of people humorously calling on people who needed water to go there for their bath. So, yes, the police response, as heavy-handed as it has always been, was there. I don't even want to waste time on it. We already made it clear that this is a process driven by law, and we're going to abide by law. Even as the institutions we engage with refuse to do the same. So we went through the night when we got the injunction, we're served with the injunction, through the night, and by Friday, we had already filed at the Supreme Court, invoking a supervisory jurisdiction to quash that order. Now, that order itself is an order in perpetuity. So it doesn't expire.
Really?
So now, yes, it's another. You should read the case very carefully. It says they are prohibiting us from protesting until such time as government lifts restrictions. When would that be? So it's another in perpetuity. Now, let's be clear to all Ghanaians listening to us. We have tried to secure an order to go on protest and notify the police, and this has happened. Do not wait on us. I want as many people who are aggrieved and want to take to the street to notify the police that they want to go onto the street. This order is directed at us as conveners of the Face the Ghana protest. If tomorrow people came up and convened 6-6 now protest, the order will not bind them. So many people have to go and use and test our democratic institutions. As long as we are concerned, there's an order binding us and our assigns and workmen and all the legal jargon that you have, which says that anybody that is connected to us in whatsoever way cannot go on a protest and that fix the country. Now, we have received word from the Supreme Court that the matter will be heard on the 8th of June. We have said that we are planning to put in an application to have them bring that forward so that we can argue the case before the Supreme Court and have the highest court of the land tell us that whether the faith we are placing in our democracy to speak for once, whether that faith is misplaced.